Today on the Pro-Life Podcast, Alabama has decided embryos are children. Good job, Alabama. We're going to talk about this. Let's get started. Happy Thursday, Pro-Life family. Grab your coffee. I'm in round 2. Welcome to the table. Pull up a chair. Oh my goodness. I feel like every time I sit in this chair, I get to say sentences I never thought I'd have to say. But here we are. So before we get into that, hey, it's good to have you guys at the table.
Thanks.
Would you mind introducing yourselves?
I'm Bailey Barton. I'm a development associate at Texas Right to Life.
I'm Veronica Smither. I worked at Texas Right to Life for 10 years, and now I just talk on the podcast.
And you raise babies.
Yes, we have 4 kids at home.
We appreciate you coming in and talking on the podcast. Hi, Brent Klingerman, IT guy and sayer of weird headlines. This is okay. I'm excited about this ruling. We want to talk about the Alabama ruling, right?
Yeah, everybody's
Alabama
talking
Supreme
about
Court
Alabama.
decided embryos are people,
Yeah.
no matter where they're at. Thanks, Alabama. Good job.
Yeah.
But the news has lost their minds. So to help everybody know where we're at here, what the status is, and how we're going to talk about this, we want to talk about how did we get to needing this ruling in the first place?
Yeah, let's start from the beginning. And disclaimer, I'm not a lawyer. I'm just trying to explain this in the most simple terms. There was a lawsuit because in one of these fertility clinics where they're doing IVF, I do not know all the details of this, but I guess another patient had their hands on frozen embryos and dropped them. And so they thawed and died. And these parents of the frozen embryos, children, they sued because those are their children and they died. But then it brings up the question of what rights do embryos have?
Right.
What rights do frozen embryos have that are out of the womb? And this is not a new conversation. You might just be tuning into it. Welcome.
Welcome to the chaos.
Welcome. It's weird here, but you're welcome to stay.
The frozen embryo conversation has been ongoing for a while. You might have seen some headlines and some magazines of celebrities, going to court because they are getting a divorce and they don't know what to do with their frozen embryos that they produce that are frozen in a lab somewhere. And the reason why people go to court about this, the reason why people sue if their embryo dies at the hands of somebody else, the reason why people get excited when they find out they have embryos after going through the IVF procedure is because embryos are the beginning of development of our lives.
Yep.
They are people.
Every one of us, of the 3 people in this room, 3 of them were embryos at one point.
Yes.
It's just a stage of development.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Like being a teenager is a stage of development.
Awkward,
Unfortunate
messy
stage.
stage of development.
Are they humans? Yes.
Yes, they
Unfortunately.
are. You don't even have them yet.
Well.
Let me tell you, the fun hasn't started yet. All right?
Oh my goodness.
But you were a teenager at one point too, and your parents were just like, oh.
Yep. Pretty
Yeah,
much.
we all go through that stage.
Yeah.
Right? And it's just a stage of development. And Texas is going to have a similar case because there's a debate between.
I hadn't heard this yet.
There's a similar case. The couple, she wants the frozen children to be treated as children, not property, and he wants them to be treated as property in the divorce case.
Wow.
And so we are quickly headed in the direction of Texas having some similar kind of case in the Supreme
That's
Court and a
so
ruling
interesting.
forthcoming.
I mean, I'm glad this is overdue because people have been wondering for a couple of decades now what to do with the leftover embryos, and it's such a difficult topic. I think even most pro-life groups, even most religions, I feel like don't have a definitive answer because
So messy.
either way you go, some people will say we should adopt them all out or give the children to couples who want to adopt. And many people have adopted embryos from a clinic that were no longer needed by the original couple.
So,
but the problem with that is
yeah.
it kind of creates a market. It creates a commodity it creates a demand. Like this is a problem, and I'm glad that those children were adopted and they are living human beings now, and that's a wonderful thing.
Mhm.
But we also have to be very careful.
Yep.
And then, of course, the opposite direction is, well, if you have a bunch of leftover embryos, then just destroy them, discard them. They're no longer needed. Clearly, that's a problem. But then the middle ground is indefinite cryo storage.
Yeah.
Like, what?
And we're talking about a million. Approximately 1 million embryos are frozen in America.
Holy cow.
Easily.
That's just in the
Easily.
U.S. too, because
That's
IVF
just the US.
is huge in Australia. They were the ones who first popularized gender selection in Australia, and I remember other countries like the UK and the United States were like, "Oh, that's evil. People
Don't do
should
that."
preach it, right?" And I'm like, "Well, now everyone's doing that. They're deciding whether they want. If they had a boy first, now they're gonna have a girl, or vice versa." And of course, in countries that discourage having girls in the first place, they're using it to create boys, and it's just wild.
So,
what a mess.
well, and wait, let's talk here. Like IVF, we're harvesting a bunch of eggs.
Mhm.
Now, we are and there's an article, and I can put it in the description below. And it's an older article, but I was looking for like how many discarded, like how many abandoned. Apparently, nationally, at least 2019, the stat was about 90,000 a year abandoned frozen
Yikes.
embryos.
Yeah.
Okay, so not a small number.
I think the average per couple is about 5. Maybe I'm
Probably so this article in
hard to
particular,
quantify that.
right, was getting into like we say like if you are creating a fertilized embryo and you're implanting that one, okay, like there's nothing inherently bad there. We're using technology.
Not when it comes to the life or death issue.
Right,
Right.
on the
You're
life
not
or death issue.
destroying one. You're not destroying another human being just to implant the one.
The issue
So
gets
that's not a life or
into
death issue.
when these doctors are harvesting 40, 50, 60 eggs and we
fertilizing
fertilize
all of
everything.
them. Mhm.
And nobody's going to have 30, 40 kids.
Right.
Like, I don't care how
Yeah,
great
if
your
you
health
fertilize
is.
all of those eggs, and
You're
then,
not
and then
pulling
you
off
grade. What they do is they grade the embryo quality.
Mhm.
They look for genetic anomalies.
Right.
They look for even sometimes key characteristics that they want in their DNA, and
And in America, genders and
yeah,
things like that.
Yes,
And
it is
then-
fully legal in America to go through IVF and to choose which gender baby you are going to give birth to.
Right.
It is fully legal.
Considered completely
now I
normal.
want to make a gender
Now-
joke. I'm going to.
I know, I always-
The end. Okay, so but what they do after that is they grade the good quality
Mhm.
ones, A, B, C, D, and then they only usually implant some of category A.
Yeah.
Because let's say they have 5 good
Yep.
quality category A embryos, but they don't necessarily implant all 5.
Yep.
Usually implant 2 to 3
Mhm.
at a time. And then
And then we see what happens.
not all of them will take. Some of them will naturally miscarry. If all of them take, you have triplets. Or
Or they.
you have the option to do what they call selective reduction,
Yep.
which is code for abortion. They go in with a very small metal fine tip and poke the embryo so that it will die and all the tissues will be reabsorbed and hopefully doesn't disturb the other embryos during the growth process. So there's a lot of dilemmas here,
Mhm. Yeah, it's not a 1-to-1. It's not like we fertilized one and now we implant one and we see what happens because time and it's cost, right? Like the
Costs a
number
lot
of
of
times
money.
we have to go harvesting eggs, it's a lot of money, it's expensive, it's time consuming. So they feel like it's easier to just get a bunch at once.
Yeah.
And then, but
I can't.
we're talking about human lives.
Right,
and
right.
unfortunately right now the state of Texas still draws this line as
Well, it's
at this moment of this recording,
things happen fast.
right?
Well, let's go back to what it means for Alabama.
Okay,
So what does this ruling mean now that they have legally declared frozen embryos to be children?
well, as I understand it, for Alabama, it's the accidental death. So the IVF process doesn't really change
Mm-hmm.
because it's still the process. At least, like for the state of Texas, it's part of the process. Like our abortion law doesn't affect IVF processes because it's an accepted part of the process.
The eye roll is strong.
That's, I'm sorry. It just like we just
It's
accept
inconsistent.
that
Yeah.
So
when it comes to Alabama, then so it's not changing the IVF process, but it changes people's. First of all, it raises the conversation, which is really important. But I think legally speaking, what it means is going to play out over time. Right now, I saw one article talking about this woman. This woman was being interviewed who she has embryos frozen in storage. She was talking about how difficult this is because she doesn't know what to do with them, and she knows that she can't implant them. She doesn't think she could have any more children. So she is torn, like all these other parents. Most of them are very torn on what to do. And so her concern is that if she leaves them in storage for quote unquote too long, because they don't know what that means, like how long is too long,
we don't know.
then could she be considered deemed inappropriate as a mother for neglecting or abusing these children? That's her concern. And I think that's a really interesting question. It's a really interesting question.
Hadn't thought that, like,
yeah, that was on CNN.
well, I mean, court cases eventually will get there somehow.
I understand her concern because, I mean, when you don't have the timeline and you don't have everything spelled out very clearly, then there could be the possibility of someone saying, well, yeah, you're deemed unfit and these children are going to be seized from you in the way that CPS seizes a child from a neglectful or abusive parent. So I think we do need to make it clear what it means, like what is neglect and abuse, and how are they defined in this case?
Well,
because I don't ever want to say that mother is being abusive or neglectful and I don't want her children to be stolen from her either.
Right.
So like we need to clarify that. But I also want to tell her, like, you've created a storm. Like, tell all your friends to never do what you did. Like, this is so risky behavior, like creating these children and leaving them indefinitely in storage, because she even says, I don't know what to do with them.
Well,
so I'm not ready to give them up for adoption.
For the state of Alabama, like the state of Louisiana is you cannot destroy embryos. So I'm thinking now Alabama,
so they're not allowed to destroy them.
Alabama's probably ends up in the same situation of like, well, you can't discard frozen embryos.
Well, a lot of states
there's
allow
laws
the couple
written
to
and now
choose
laws
them
interpreted
to donate to
in
science. And what does that mean? That's destruction of embryos in a totally different format.
And see, and it's crazy because like IVF, the first I think successful IVF procedure was done like in the late 70s or something. And I think we get to this point of like right now we are questioning, is it ethical to freeze your embryos? Is it ethical to destroy your embryos? And this is what happens when you're not asking these questions in the first place.
Probably should have asked that before we started this.
Because we're dealing with we're talking about human dignity. Yeah. Human dignity. This is not something that we should take lightly. And like I said in the beginning, there's a reason why these parents were upset when these frozen embryos were thawed. There's a reason why some woman out there and her husband get excited when they find out they have X number of embryos. There's a reason, and you can't ignore it.
Yeah, it's because a life was created, and there's that emotional attachment.
Yeah.
And I think when this woman being interviewed by CNN was talking about how much inner turmoil she has over the decision on what to do, I think that's a very telling sign. That emotional attachment is there because of the reality of the human bond. Mm-hmm. And like, it's not just property that we're torn over, like fine jewels that someone stole. Like, you could mourn fine jewels being stolen, but it is not even close to the same level of mourning a decision over how to care for your frozen children.
I want to pause that thought because there's a couple other thoughts here we need to get to. I want to talk how this case looks forward. I want to talk like sci-fi on the horizon. But we need to talk a little deeper on emotional implications and mental health, and so there's still so much after the break.
Great news. Texas Right to Life is celebrating our 50th birthday this year. This is half a century of victories that the Lord has given us, but God is not done yet. the battle for life is only increasing as the abortion industry is going underground to promote death and sell abortion. Join us in supporting Texas Right to Life's 50th birthday campaign and chip in with a gift today. Thank you for 50 years of saving lives. And friend, the best is yet to come.
Get your tickets today for the Convention for Life. This is like my favorite convention all year. June 22nd in Houston at Grace Church in the Woodlands. We're going to level up that pro-life knowledge, and you are going to be a pro-life expert. We're going to hear from an amazing lineup of speakers to help you defend your beliefs, including author Danielle D'Souza Gill. If that D'Souza name sounds a little familiar, yeah, Dinesh's daughter. It's going to be an amazing time. We are going to celebrate the anniversary of the overturn of Roe v. Wade, and we're going to look forward and talk about some of the issues facing our movement. Get your tickets at conventionforlife.com. All the details and links below, conventionforlife.com. We'll see you in June. Welcome back, friends. Okay, I need to pick up on the weird here, but let's...
You got this.
It's too much. Let me summarize. Okay, we were discussing the emotional implications, and then I want to talk about this judge looking forward in the rulings, in this ruling, and the sci-fi moving forward, and some stuff, because there's talking about stuff here that we've talked about on this show, but
It's all coming to fruition.
okay, one thing at a time.
Okay.
In order, sort of. The emotional implications, I think there is something to be said for the emotional mental health situation that we're creating, in that you've got parents who have struggled to have children. This is typically why they're doing that. I mean, you get the outliers that are doing it because, well, I want designer child and I want them to have this color hair. And
Paris Hilton.
Wait, did she do that?
Sorry, I didn't mean to miss it all.
No,
did you miss that episode? It was,
she has
I missed it.
she's very open about this, that they wanted a boy and they wanted a girl, and they did IVF.
Wow.
So she's got like 20 frozen boys.
I really don't
They didn't
follow Paris Hilton, but that's good to know.
Darn.
Yeah.
Pop culture. Yay.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, we
Wow.
talked about it a month or so ago.
Yeah, it's been a
little bit.
minute.
I'll have to go watch it.
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah,
What's next?
there's that other, yes. But now they've struggled to have children. They've created these embryos. Now they have these children that are forever in limbo.
Yeah. Actually, okay, that reminds me of Kamala Harris's press interview after the ruling. She said that she finds it ironic, which is my favorite word. She's misusing it. She finds it ironic.
How ironic. You're misusing
that
ironic.
basically conservatives, she didn't say they were conservatives, but, us people who are pro-life will deny someone an abortion because we deem it a human life, and yet we are also now, quote unquote, denying them the right to access the ability to start a family with IVF. That's what she said. And she thinks it's ironic because it's like, well, now we won't even let them start a family. But she's missing the point.
Right.
Our
did.
point
You already did.
Is
You
that
did start a family.
already started a family by creating a bunch of embryos and freezing them in a lab indefinitely, and that now they are being neglected and they have an undetermined future, and they have a right to life, liberty, and happiness.
I say this a lot in my house. I feel like we're going to get 20, 30 years down the road, and we're going to look back and go, oh yeah, that was kind of like smoking was when like we were growing up, and it was all like, this is bad for you, don't do this. And then you get to, I'm in my 40s, and it's just like, yeah, I'm not going to, because obviously that's not the thing to do. And there's going to be all these things with technology and stuff that we look back on and go, yeah, that was maybe not our brightest moment.
I just thought of a horrible sci-fi plot.
Oh dear.
Someone is going to steal all these embryos and create a clone army. Take over the world.
It's called episode 2 of Star Wars.
Oh my gosh.
But they weren't actually all human though, so anyway. But no, seriously, like someone could actually totally
you didn't
misuse
see episode 2, did you?
the
Did
movie.
you see episode 2?
Yeah, all the movies.
Yes.
We're cutting this part.
They're clones off. Anyways, well, it's
Well, I know they're
sidetrack.
clones.
They were clones off of one guy, not so human.
But
yes,
they were also
but
some robots, so they weren't all humans. Is what I'm
there's
saying. There was the
droid
human
armies,
clone
yes. There was the
group
droid army,
that didn't
yes.
last very long, and then there was the drone.
the clankers. All right. Anyways,
Okay, so we're cutting that part. We're cutting that part.
I'm a nerd who loves sci-fi.
It's like all over my head. I have no idea what we're talking about.
That's, you keep up with Paris Hilton, and I keep up.
I need
Roger. Okay. Nerd.
Where
life.
were we?
We were, yes.
But no, someone could totally, like, what if someone does not know what to do with their embryos and they're frozen indefinitely?
Mhm.
Like, what if this becomes like a black market? Anything could happen. I'm just catastrophizing here just to showcase that, like, this is a problem and we don't know what to do.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it is a problem. It has been admitted for years. We don't know what to do with this.
I keep waiting for the day
a
when
million
some
kids
like
on ice.
super smart college student is like, I have,
I
know.
Finger when you do that.
But no, like someone who has this ingenious idea that no one's had yet, like of what to do with them.
Yeah.
I can't. I mean, I'm clueless.
Let them
You're
grow
right,
up.
though.
I mean, obviously,
we can't let this. The solution cannot create a market, and I think that is a good point.
Yes.
This past week, there was a quote from actress Kristen Stewart. She from the Twilight films. She was. We won't go down this whole rabbit hole, but she was talking about how her and her partner were definitely planning to acquire children. And I'm quoting her. She said acquire. And it's bizarre that we live in a time where we all know what that means. We're like, yeah, that's people do be acquiring children now. Like,
People do
they through stuff like this. Like it's we're living in the future.
Oh, wow. God's children not for sale.
I'm in pain.
Yeah, you cannot commodify children.
No.
And that's where it starts though. It starts with, the sad reality of a lot of, married couples who just want to have kids.
Yeah.
But we have to think about the dignity of human life and what that could do, creating a market of a bunch of frozen embryos that are just up for sale.
Yeah. So I know that because this is already like to the second segment of the podcast, that people who are disagreeing with us are probably not going to
probably
listen.
tuned out already. Yeah.
They've already tuned out. But
okay.
now
It's
I have
just
a
as friends
message
now.
for them. So I don't know. Maybe we could clip it out, make it a short.
It'll be a video later.
Is that these families who have chosen IVF and created their children that way often don't know the reality of what's happening.
Yep.
And I do not want them to feel judged.
Yeah.
Now some of them do know perfectly well, but others don't. And I even had a friend once who was struggling with infertility for about 4 or 5 years and decided to go. Someone asked her, like, why don't you just go check out an IVF clinic? Like, just think about it. And so she went and they gave her their spiel and she was like, the whole thing just made me very uncomfortable, but I didn't really know why. And I don't think I want to go back. And I was just sitting there like biting my tongue thinking like, I have so many thoughts. I know all about this. I want to tell you everything. But I was waiting for her to finish, trying to be a good friend, listening. And then I was like, I'm so glad you told me. I know a lot about IVF. Would you like to learn more? And she was like, wait, yes. What else do you know? And so then I was able to tell her like how it actually works and the destruction of embryos and like frozen indefinitely, all this. And she was just like, oh my gosh. And I'm so horrified that I ever stepped foot in that place because she's very pro-life, very sensitive to this, but totally unaware of anything about IVF.
That's the thing. Most people don't know. We've had
until it's too
all
late.
these conversations about this.
Then the doctor's like, what do you want to do with your 6 other embryos? And they're like,
wait, 6?
What?
Have what? And
what?
Yeah.
What do you mean? What do I do? What are my options? And then they're like, you can donate to science. You can freeze them indefinitely. You can give them to other couples. And they're like, I don't know what to decide. Of course, I'll freeze them for now while I make the decision. And then 10 years go by or more, and they're still just in turmoil over this. So I don't want these couples to feel judged that like we think they're doing evil. It's often that they're lied to and prompted to do an evil thing without knowledge that it was evil. And
it seems like the medical community isn't completely giving you the information you need to make an informed decision.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
I've never been in one of these clinics. I've never heard their spiel. But it just feels like most people don't know what's going on in the process. They have a very loose understanding, generally, right? We know, okay, we're going to fertilize an egg, and we're going to try for a successful pregnancy. They're in the dark on we're going to fertilize like 20 eggs and see what happens. And nobody's going to walk away having 20 children.
Yeah. Could you imagine in your budget line for the year, like your annual fee for your embryo being
storage,
frozen?
right?
Yeah, the storage.
Oh,
which, if you didn't know that, like it costs money.
Yeah.
Of course it does. Yeah.
Everything
One of the
costs money.
articles I was saying it costs usually about $1,000 a year.
And
That's
that's where
probably
that-
on the low end.
And that's where that 90,000 children abandoned in the frozen system comes in.
Yeah, because what do you do if the payment's not coming in to keep the embryo frozen?
That's a great question.
Is that our taxpayer? Like,
So
is
that's-
our tax money
that's
paying for
the
that?
thing
Like,
Or did they destroy them after so many months of not paying rent? Like what? Yeah, that's a great question. I've never.
Even
have
these other
questions.
articles, it gets into there's not a good answer for that. Like you've got Louisiana that's like, nope, can't destroy them.
Well, and
But
that
then you've
brings
got
it
other
right
states that
back
are like,
to the
okay.
concern of neglect and abuse in Alabama. What if someone's not able to make payment anymore? And then the state says, well, that's neglect and abuse. So then what happens? Are their children seized by the state, or are they destroyed? Or like I can only imagine.
Well, the state can't destroy
we
them because
need-
we've decided they're people.
Yeah, that's
So,
true. That's true. They're
we
not
can't
going to
destroy
destroy
them,
them.
they've
But
decided
then
they're
what
people.
happens? Whose property? And property is not a good word for this. But all the other states are
Whose
still calling
children are
them
they now?
property.
Yeah.
Yeah. All the other states are still deeming them property.
Yeah,
Alabama deems them
I
children.
hadn't thought
finally.
about the whole CPS 2 census. There's so many things that I
Yeah.
feel like we
Yeah.
should have had answers on these questions before we got here.
before it became
Okay.
a business. Like the fact
Right.
that we didn't even talk about that is
Okay.
how much money this brings in. This
I
is
know, I
a
know.
business.
Boy, millions and millions of dollars.
Just
Yes.
like abortion is a business.
Yes.
Oy.
And then surrogacy is a business. And us, I was mad last night
Y'all are making me
driving
sad.
home, and there's this surrogacy billboard. And I'm just like,
I
Oh,
know
I've
they're
seen that
everywhere all over
one.
Houston.
only
lately,
know what you're getting
surrogacy
into.
billboards. That's another topic for another day.
Okay, that's conversation for another day. I do want to props to this judge for Justice Jay Mitchell, who writing for the majority, pronounced what he called the latent implication in of the defense's argument. Basically, looking forward, because they were arguing that just because the child isn't in utero, that's not a child.
Yeah.
And he's looking forward, saying, no, location doesn't matter, it's a child.
Yeah.
And so this article actually was from MIT in their review, talking about actually it's good that this judge is looking forward because synthetic wombs are becoming a thing.
Yes.
Episodes in the can. I'm probably gonna push that we drop this like next round because we've talked about this. The Children's Hospital of Philadelphia has asked the FDA for human trial.
Yeah.
They've
Artificial wombs.
artificial wombs. So you would
They
take.
are real.
It
And
is
they're
a thing.
asking for human trials right now.
Yeah.
That's a big
So
deal.
this judge looking forward because that's extra utero, right?
Yeah.
There's your SAT word for the day. The sci-fi words, man.
No,
It's
it's great.
crazy.
It's great that the Alabama judge, like, props to them for deeming them children, and props to him, the judge, for looking forward, thinking, if we're deeming these extra uterine children,
Mm-hmm.
frozen in cryo in an IVF clinic, then we also have to think about the Homo sapiens who are growing in an artificial womb, because that will inevitably happen soon, and it's not even that far off
Yeah.
because of all these other news stories that we're going to talk about really soon.
It is a thing that is moving
well,
forward.
and it's
FDA human
crazy.
trials means it's around the corner. It's a couple
Crazy.
years from
It's
done.
So relevant. I'm so glad he said this, because the Democrats' immediate rebuttal to this Alabama ruling is to declare that children that extra uterine, like, embryos are never children for any reason whatsoever. Like, it was just a very, like, a one-liner bill. like embryos growing outside of a human body are not deemed children legally for any reason whatsoever, and never will be. And I'm like, that's
gonna change
really
here as
crazy, because what if the same people later on want to be able to use an artificial womb to save a child that's prematurely born. Like
Right.
that was the talk of the day when people first started talking about artificial
Well, then
wombs.
the argument would probably be it's not an embryo, it's a fetus at that point.
Possibly, yeah, they could play
There
semantics
would
on
be
that.
some of that semantics, but
Yeah, because
let's just
the
talk
difference
about
between an embryo and fetus is just from week 9 to week 10. Like that's when you transition from embryo to fetus. It's just stages of development from like toddler to, like kindergartner to like big.
adolescent, preteen.
My kid, he said whenever I say you're gonna be a big kid soon, he's like, no, I'm not. I'm a medium-sized kid. So like stages of development, right?
Size is relative.
Right.
Whatever.
It's so funny.
So it is in the near future that synthetic wombs are going to be a medical science. This is a technology that will be used. There's actually in this article a reference to an international group that wants to use it for research of synthetic embryos. We just
Which
talked
they've
about
already
synthetic
created.
embryos.
Yeah, just a couple weeks ago we talked about the UK. Some group in UK had already created synthetic embryos, which is just so freaky.
Well, this
So
group is in
freaky.
Israel. It's all in that link if you want to follow.
So there's
that one.
more than one group
So-
doing this now.
More than one
creating
group in more than one
synthetic
country
embryos.
have figured out how to do this, and they want to use the synthetic womb to bring these embryos further along in
Well,
development.
Sounds like the UK, or I should say, I'm going to say the US is already considering it. Like if they're already pitching the FDA, I mean, it's not easy. It's not hard to get the FDA to say yes. So it's possible that
America.
we'll have artificial wombs very soon. Oh, it's so bad that I laugh so much about such terrible things, but
It's,
it's how I get through life.
it's
But,
a little salty about anything in particular you want to bring up?
Back on track. Back
Yes,
on track.
back on track.
So, of course, the just like anything, an artificial womb is a tool, right?
Yes.
You can't ever deem a tool to have a moral value.
Yes.
It can be used for good or for evil.
And we get all in the
And-
weeds on that with Dr. Sego. So
Oh yeah. Next episode. Okay.
Next
I'll
episode,
stop it. I'll stop
we'll
talking.
we'll talk about that one next episode.
Yeah.
But IVF is a tool.
Yeah.
And if we aren't making a whole bunch of children that we know we're going to discard, then
It's less of a problem.
This is much less of a problem.
Yeah.
It's when we start throwing humans away because they didn't make the genetic grading
Yeah.
and, we have too many of them. We don't need these.
Yeah. Well, gosh, now I'm so curious what's going to happen with Texas with their possible similar Alabama case.
Yep.
We shall see.
We shall see what happens in Texas here moving forward. It's on the horizon that some sort of decision, because right now you can still destroy embryos in Texas. The whole IVF process, the abortion laws they're not written for IVF. They're written for abortion, and they're two different things. And so it gets into the weeds, and hopefully Supreme Court here will, as this case makes it forward, we'll be keeping an eye on it.
Yeah.
Hopefully they'll bring some clarity. They will also affirm that they're children. They are children. You conceive children. Congratulations, you have children, and now we have to act accordingly.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay,
Wow.
guys.
This is heavy.
We
This
got
is a lot.
this.
I feel like we're just in a long string of episodes that are really, really heavy.
Jesus, take the wheel. See y'all next time.
Oh my gosh. Friends, thanks for watching. Oh my gosh. I'm just trying to wrap this stuff up.
Make good choices. Don't discriminate.
Right? Right.
Humans have dignity.
Share
We
this
must respect
podcast.
it. Donate to Texas Right to Life.
Yeah.
Links below. Like, share, subscribe. Thanks for watching, friends. You're going to have some conversations with your friends and neighbors now. And we will see you at the episode with Dr. Sego about synthetic wombs, if he doesn't get bumped for even more urgent news again. See you next time. Thanks, friends.